And it really goes to prove that if you don't measure something, nothing will be done about it.
And we have to make New Jersey's business climate more attractive for entrepreneurs.
We are Wonder Women. Like, look at all these women and what they've done and what they've tried. And even if they didn't succeed, they gave it a shot.
I don't think it's fair to put a $4 or $5 billion price tag on middle-class New Jerseyans.
We've got a great lifestyle here, and I don't want to see it ruined because politicians can't manage our finances properly.
Welcome to As a Matter of Fact. I'm Lisa Allen, and we are filming from Hometown TV Studios in Summit, New Jersey. It is my pleasure to welcome Assemblyman Jack Ciattarelli, one of the Republican candidates running for governor in New Jersey, also known as the Garden State. Welcome, Assemblyman.
Good to be back, Lisa. Nice to see you again.
Yes, thank you. You mentioned being back. We had you in August.
That's right.
Right? You were on as a small business owner talking about the business climate. You had some inkling that you were going to run, but now you're back as a true gubernatorial candidate.
I am.
All right, so I have a question for you.
Okay.
When you think about what our state is going through right now, we are ranked as the worst business climate among other states. We are about $2 billion in debt for unused sick payout. That just came out recently. We're over $80 billion in debt for pensions. We have an aging infrastructure. We're losing kids when they graduate school. And according to the taxfoundation.org, New Jersey ranks 49th in Freedom Day, meaning that the average resident in New Jersey will work until May 12th before they've earned enough money to pay all federal, state, and local taxes of the year. I could go on and on, but here's the question. Why are you running for governor in this climate?
Well, for all the reasons you state, we're on the brink. New Jersey's broke. But I'm confident that my plan can fix it. I've got specific ideas on how to turn it around. I'm not giving up on this state because the people that live here and work here are resilient. I think in their heart of hearts, they want us to turn it around. And I think with the right kind of leadership, style, politics, and policies, we can turn it around. So
we can?
I have faith in my candidacy.
All right. And I feel we always talk about Jersey has a spending problem, not a revenue problem. I'm hoping that's maybe the case.
We're experiencing revenue shortfalls. So we're not really as robust an economy as we should be. So yes, we have a spending problem, but what we're beginning to see is also a revenue problem. Revenue shortfalls, which is another reason why we're getting credit downgrades by Moody's and Standard & Poor's.
All right. You talked about your 5-point plan. What is it?
It's 5 very, very specific points on the crisis that plague this state and punish New Jerseyans every single day. And first and foremost is the school funding crisis. This is what drives the property tax crisis in the state. And property taxes is something that touches everyone and everything. Whether you're a business that owns your property or rents your property, property taxes affects you. Whether you're an individual that owns your property or rents your property, property taxes affect you. And we need to solve it. And the way to start is with the school funding crisis. Without a doubt, our 565 municipalities and our 611 school districts, in part, are responsible for the property tax crisis too. We've got way too much government and we're way too fragmented, but the primary driver is the school funding crisis. And I'll give you a very compelling example. A $300,000 house in this community, Summit, pays more in property taxes than an $800,000 waterfront condo in Jersey City. That's because of the way that we distribute state aid for schools.
Break that down.
Well, the fact of the matter is, here in this town, you all pay for 80% of your schools through the local property tax levy. When you go to Jersey City, they pay less than 20 cents on the dollar for their schools through the local property tax levy because they get so much aid from the state. And I believe places like Jersey City have gone through a rebirth, a revitalization. It's time to get off the state aid.
Right.
State aid is supposed to be a crutch until you can walk on your own 2 feet.
Well,
Hoboken and Jersey City can.
Yeah, well, I would say Jersey City might argue that point because there's a whole struggling area where the kids, they don't have after-school care or, somewhere to go after school. Their students are struggling. They're not graduating. There are people who would argue that point.
I agree with you that there are pockets of poverty in every community, Jersey City included. But I will tell you that there are great pockets of affluence in Jersey City, and even the affluent in Jersey City are benefiting from the distribution of school aid. A perfect example of that is Jersey City gets its pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds funded entirely by the state without means testing. People of affluence can send their 3- and 4-year-olds to pre-K for free. Here in Summit, you've got blue-collar people paying $10,000, $12,000, $14,000 a year to send their kids to pre-K. How is this possibly fair?
Right. And you had mentioned pilots. I think this is a really important point. Talk to the viewers about what a pilot is and what it means to do payment in lieu of taxes.
So here's what a mayor and council in any town can do. To attract development, they'll incentivize a developer to develop a piece of property by giving them a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes. So instead of paying property taxes, they'll make a flat payment each year to the municipality. The municipality will usually keep 95% of that and send 5% of it to the county government,
Oh, wow.
but 0 to the school district. Now, I know you're familiar with your property tax bill. What is the greatest percentage of your property tax bill?
The education, it's 50% of our bill.
School taxes.
Yeah.
And yet here we have communities that are negotiating pilots and sending none of the pilot to the school district. In actuality, they're increasing their dependency. They're perpetuating their dependency on the state aid for schools. It is unfair. So here's what I've said in my plan. You want to negotiate a pilot to incentivize economic development, rock and roll. But 75% of that pilot has to go to the school district.
How do they get away with not sending money to the school district?
Because pilots are a legal tax incentive program. But if we've learned anything, particularly for communities that are dependent on the state for their school systems, it is unfair. They're perpetuating their dependency on the state aid for schools.
You know, because as the school funding formula came up in Summit, there are people for and against it. I mean, Summit, I think, gets $400 per student. It seems as though with Governor Christie, it's kind of come off the table a little bit. How do you change the conversation and really push a fairness formula? Because we don't want to leave behind those urban areas. I think they're really struggling. But how do you reopen that conversation to engage everyone around the table so that you don't block out people who really feel like, you know, Jersey City, certain points of Jersey City need that funding?
So to the governor's credit, he put out there the most aggressive plan. In terms of sending every school district a flat amount on a per student basis. I didn't support this plan because it would never pass muster with the Supreme Court. The fact of the matter is, for what you just stated, some communities are always going to be a little more needy than others, and not all students are equal in their educational needs. What I've said is this: of our 600 school districts, we've got more than 200 that are overfunded. They get more money than they're supposed to because of a grandfather clause in the current law. The aid should actually go down as a community's ability to pay goes up. That hasn't happened. In fact, Jersey City aid has increased every single year despite the revitalization that's taking place there. So what I've said is, for those communities that are grossly overfunded, like Hoboken, like Jersey City, they're going to have to return that excess 20% a year over a 5-year period. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to send it to all the school districts like Summit that are grossly underfunded to bring some equity back to the system and fairness back to property taxes. It is unfair that a $300,000 house in this community pays more in property taxes than an $800,000 house in Jersey City.
Yeah.
And I think the Supreme Court would agree.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Now, the school funding formula is part of your plan.
It is.
What's the other 4 points?
So the school funding formula is point number 1. There's a lot of other moving parts in there, but what that does is help solve the property tax crisis. Point number 2 has to do with public workers' employee benefits. In my opinion, they are still too generous, and the primary reason why we're not making the full pensions payment. And we all know the pension system goes broke in about 10 years.
Yeah.
So we need to solve that. And I'm not going to go back to the taxpayers in New Jersey for more money to solve the pension system. Here's what we can do. We can have all those people that have been employed 10 years or less in the public sector go into a cash balance plan. We can have all new hires go into a 401k. And we can have all current and future retirees whose pension plus Social Security is north of $50,000. These are public retirees now, public sector. If their pension plus their Social Security is north of $50,000, they begin to contribute toward their own post-retirement health care benefit.
Okay.
We have retirees today who are making $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 or more that contribute nothing toward their post-retirement health care benefit.
$0?
$0. These 3 reforms alone, you would not believe how they decrease the long-term unfunded liability, the current expense, and enable me to increase the current payment into the system. And that's how you point a pension system towards solvency.
Right. So you would not touch the people who already are into their benefits because that was what was promised to them. But you're saying for new hires, You would start there, or how would you?
Well, again, all people that are employed in government less than 10 years, we are changing the deal. You're going into a cash balance plan because we can no longer afford a defined benefit pension plan. Defined benefit pension plans do not work when people are living into their 80s and 90s. The math does not work. As a CPA, I've done pension and profit sharing plan accounting. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So we need these reforms. Less than 10 years, cash balance plan, all new hires 401k, all current and future retirees, pension plus Social Security is more than $50,000. On a sliding scale, you begin to contribute to your own post-retirement health care benefit. And by the way, these were the same recommendations made by a blue ribbon panel chaired by Tom Byrne, who's one of the most prominent Democrats in the state.
Yes.
In fact, when I came out with my plan, Tom called and said, "We love that you've adopted." I said, "Tom, I'm embarrassed to tell you, I didn't even read your panel plan." But I'm glad to know that we're in sync.
Yeah. He was actually here in Summit on a forum for Civic Story. And I think that people know it has to be done.
People know.
We're not short on intellectual capital and solving this problem. It's a political problem.
Listen, when you take a look at my 5-point plan, you will see a little bit of pain anywhere. But anyone who suggests that there is no pain in this hole that we've dug ourselves into in New Jersey, I don't want to say they're lying, but they're not being truthful.
Right. But how do you change a contract when you're already 10 years in?
If you take a look at case law in other states that have been heard by the courts, there are grounds for changes. And here's what I've said to all retirees, for example, our teachers and our state workers. Allow me to save your pension. Allow me to save your pension. Tragedy of all tragedies would be in 2026, according to Standard & Poor's and Moody's, when that pension system goes bust and you don't get your monthly pension check.
Right.
That would be a tragedy. We have to avert that. And the way to avert it is with more reforms, because the benefits are still too generous and not on par on what goes on in the private sector.
Right. I believe you could probably get support for those unions, but it's getting the union leaders around the table to renegotiate those contracts. I think it's going to take a real leader to be able to get them to shift their mindset. Is that going to be a component of legal, bringing it to the courts, or would you try to do it on a personal level? How would you make that happen?
I'm hopeful that it doesn't have to go to the courts. Two, the gubernatorial election provides an opportunity. One of the reasons why I've been laying out such a specific plan from the time that I first announced on October 4th. And by the way, there's danger in that. You usually don't have candidates deal with this kind of specificity on how to solve our problems. What you're usually hearing are platitudes, generalities, and rhetoric. I'm an MBA CPA. I'm going to do for citizens what I've always done for my shareholders, my investors, my Fortune 100 clients, and my employees. Laid out a very, very specific plan. But here's the method in my madness. If you're this specific, and you're fortunate enough to win the election, I can walk into all the stakeholders and policymakers and say, the people of New Jersey have endorsed my plan.
Right.
Let us move forward.
Right. Okay. So school funding,
School funding,
the pensions,
employee workers benefits. Point number 3 in my 5-point plan deals with the tax code. Page after page after page of our tax code is a disincentive. We need to make sure the estate tax stays abolished. We need to get rid of transfer inheritance taxes. We need to allow for the carry forward of capital losses and accelerated depreciation as we do on our federal tax returns. We need to stop taxing the gain on the sale of a home. It's not a stock or a bond, it's a home. I believe we need to stop taxing the gain on the sale of a second home. How many middle-class New Jerseyans own a bungalow at the Jersey Shore or one of our lakefronts? They fund municipal, county, and school services by paying property taxes. And by the way, they never use those services.
Right.
And then we go and tax them on the gain on the sale of a second home? I don't think so. Here's something else that drives me just nuts about New Jersey that gives us really, really bad optics. You and your husband decide to redo a 30-year-old kitchen or bathroom in your house. You're not increasing the footprint of your home. You're not increasing your square footage. You're merely replacing a 30-year-old bathroom. You paid permit fees to the town to do the work. That's revenue for the town. You spurred the economy with the investment. And the moment you're done and you get your certificate of occupancy, what does the town do?
You raise my taxes.
They
Know it well.
reassess your property because you replaced a 30-year-old bathroom. That will be outlawed under Governor Ciattarelli. We won't tax the gain on the sale of family-owned business, so we can jumpstart entrepreneurship here in New Jersey. When you go up and down any main street, that salon, that pizzeria, that laundromat that someone started for $50,000 30 years ago, and now they're going to sell it for $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000, that's their 401k. Let them pay their capital gains to the feds, but there should be no capital gains on the sale of a family-owned business in New Jersey. and will phase out the corporate business tax 10% a year. There's no room for a corporate business tax at the state level. And I'd rather see that as a corporate incentive than this corporate welfare that we give to corporations to bribe them to stay or to come.
So
just phase out the corporate business tax.
How is that different, the corporate welfare versus having no tax?
Well, we have in this state a 10% corporate business tax. If you incorporate in this state, and by the way, fewer and fewer businesses are for this very reason, whatever your taxable income is as a corporation, you pay a 10% income tax rate to the state of New Jersey. The fact of the matter is, this is less than 10% of our revenues in Trenton. It is a decreasing revenue stream because fewer corporations are incorporating here. Phase it out. Get rid of the corporate business tax. And there's one other thing to consider in getting rid of this. When you think about what it is corporations are paying in property taxes, the highest in the nation, whether they own or rent, it seems only fair to me to phase out the corporate business tax. This plan creates a tide that lifts all boats. It will change the perception of New Jersey's business climate overnight. Optics and branding are everything, and we need to change it immediately here in New Jersey.
Are there other states that do not have a corporate business tax?
Absolutely.
Who? Do you know any of them?
Georgia,
offhand?
North Carolina, a great many states don't have a corporate business tax.
All right.
Yeah.
I get a sense that as an individual, people will say, well, I'm paying a lot in taxes. You know, it's not fair that businesses who have revenue, you know, they're generating revenue, they're not paying taxes. So people will feel as though the burden is really falling on them.
Well, here's the thing to keep in mind. First and foremost, corporate business taxes are less than 10% of our revenues in Trenton, and it's decreasing because fewer businesses incorporate here. 2, think about what corporations are paying in property taxes, funding municipal, county, and school services.
Right.
And 3, corporations, businesses of all kinds, which is why I'm trying to do things for mom and pop shops on Main Street too. Let's then put them in a position where they create more jobs. I think when people have a secure job, they can earn a decent living and achieve their American dream here in New Jersey, they won't care as much about the fact that corporations are not paying a corporate business tax to New Jersey.
Right. So it's my understanding that NewJersey.com reported the richest 100 New Jerseyans pay 5.5% of all income taxes collected. That's according to the Treasurer's Office. And the top 1% in New Jersey, the filers in New Jersey, pay about 35% of all of the state's income tax revenue. Would you raise taxes on 500 and above, 750 above?
Right. My plan does call for a restructuring of the upper brackets. And as I said, there's got to be a little bit of pain in here. However, I will not implement that tactic unless my entire tax reform package is implemented. And I've run my tax package by the people in the highest brackets, and every one of them has said, Jack, sign me up. If you're telling me, Jack, no estate taxes, no transfer inheritance taxes, carry forward of capital losses, accelerated depreciation, no gain on the sale of a family-owned business, phasing out the corporate business tax, and by the way, no reassessment on my home for the replacement of a kitchen or a bathroom or anything else, sign me up today. I want to be responsible with my plan. The way to balance the ledger in the first few years is by restructuring our marginal tax rates and closing some corporate loopholes with our corporate tax code. That's the way to balance the ledger. I'm not going to be one of these irresponsible, typical politicians that talks all about tax cuts, but then has this giant hole in the budget in the early years. We already have a hole in our budget.
Yeah.
What we need more than anything, and this is something I know about as a CPA, what we need is a tax restructuring. A tax restructuring, and in so doing, change the optics and the New Jersey brand.
Yeah. Transportation. Is that in your plan?
You bet it is.
All right.
I would really love to see Department of Transportation, New Jersey Transit, and motor vehicles all under the same roof, and make this its own little profit cost center, because motor vehicles generates $1.4 billion a year in fees. And those monies should be used not by going into the black hole known as the general fund, but used for all transportational projects. And I would put the Transportation Trust Fund debt there too. And this is the best way, I think, in my mind, to kind of bifurcate state government, to have it more reflect a modern day corporation. That's a profit center over there. Let the revenues generated by motor vehicles be used for transportation, New Jersey Transit, Department of Transportation, Transportation Trust Fund debt service, and the like.
Yeah, we only have a couple more minutes left because I do want to get to some questions from the community.
Great.
But back on transportation, because a couple weeks ago we had 2 derailments, Hoboken's still under construction. I'm not sure that 23 cents a gallon, per gas in New Jersey is enough to really fix our transportation fund. People are up in arms. How would you, if you look 10 years down the road and you're the governor, what does the transportation look like in this state?
So I voted no on the gas tax deal because it was just a very, very bad deal for New Jersey, in my opinion. Having said that, the bill passed, it's been signed by the governor, and we now have $2 billion a year more to invest in infrastructure. And I think New Jersey Transit should be the very, very first investment that we make for a couple of reasons. One, it's been neglected for the past 7 years. Yeah. 2, they've experienced fare increase after fare increase after fare increase, and yet we're suffering a crisis of reliability and a crisis of confidence. I've had people tell me, I get on that train in the morning and I'm worrying if I'm coming home that night. Yeah. We can't have that. We can't have that. And guess what? These are people doing the right thing by using mass transit.
Right.
So we need to fix New Jersey Transit immediately. To me, the $2 billion that we now have to invest in infrastructure because of the 23-cent increase needs to be invested first and foremost in New Jersey Transit.
Okay. All right, can I get to some questions from the community?
You bet.
All right, so the first one is, and I didn't read all through these, I just took them as they came in.
Okay.
Would you be willing to create a new dedicated agency / task force? Actually, this is, for Summit. This is for Union County. Similar to what the Federal Government Accountability Office has, which would be to eliminate wasteful spending at the county government level. So for example, in Summit, I know down south, everybody likes county government. In Union County, if you look at the Summit budget, 19% goes to our municipal budget, 29% goes to county. That's $40 million a year. Right. Would you create an accountability office for Union County or various counties that their government seems to be running out of control?
Listen, to be completely honest, it sounds a little heavy-handed to me that as governor, I come in now, create this office of accountability in certain counties. Should there be accountability in all 21 counties? Without a doubt. There is this dynamic in counties in which there are pockets of affluence and stable communities, and yet there are communities in that same county that are stricken by poverty and blight. And this is why you end up with the imbalance that you have, which is not fair to the taxpayers across the board. So I'm all for accountability, I'm all for transparency, and quite frankly, I think my job as governor is to focus on the inefficiencies of state government. Yeah. I think that's the best way for me to help. But this sounds like this should be a local movement. And it sounds a little heavy-handed to me as governor to come in and say, hey, Union County, you're going to have a new office of accountability. Yeah. I will certainly weigh in on that. Will I pass legislation that mandates it? That's something I'd have to think more about.
Yeah, I feel like we should also make sure that they're sticking to that 2% increase every year. And at some point, I feel as though, shouldn't it be a law that the money that we send off to the county should not be more than what we put into our municipal budget? I feel by law.
Right.
Because how do you even manage your city then? Because at some point, we're not going to have enough money for a municipal budget.
And I understand the challenge. I mean, for the most part, county governments are social services organizations, and they carry out a lot of federal social services programs like Meals on Wheels and Medicaid and the like. And let's face it, there's a great many communities in a place like Union that are not deriving any benefit whatsoever from those programs. So I understand the dynamic that's at work. I understand the concern. But point number 4 in my 5-point plan deals with me making state government more accountable, more transparent, and more cost efficient, because our state government is antiquated, it's outmoded, and it desperately needs modernization.
Okay, next question. A constituent from Morris County who served on the BOE for the Board of Education for 4 years asks, I see how little we get combined from state and federal assistance, about 3 to 5%. How, as governor, would you be able to do something that Chris Christie hasn't done over 8 years, which is to address the debacle that is now how the state allocates education funding, which we kind of touched on, even as the most powerful governor in the country? How could you possibly correct what's been a 40-year runaway train?
So a couple of things. One is I've laid out a very, very specific school funding reform plan that it gets rid of adjustment aid, it redefines local fair share, it reforms the weighted averages that we use on a cost per student basis, it reforms pilots. If the legislature, I've laid out this plan, if I'm elected, to me it's a mandate. If the legislature will not work with me, it's time to go before the Supreme Court and make a different argument. This is the argument we have not made before the Supreme Court. And I'm sorry to be repetitive, but a $300,000 house in this town is paying more in property taxes than an $800,000 house in Jersey City, and that's because of state aid. And the fact that people here are paying for pre-K, and people of affluence in Jersey City and Hoboken are getting it for free.
Right.
That sounds indefensible to me. And those are things that the Supreme Court does not know. That's the argument that needs to be made to win a fair distribution of school aid to adjust the property tax crisis and what that particular constituent is speaking to.
Yeah. Well, Summit would love all-day kindergarten. So, and we just can't afford it right now. This is a great question. How do you feel about Phil Murphy's plan for a public bank?
Well, listen, I'm an entrepreneur, and I've never been one to poo-poo an idea out of the box, but I will tell you, this idea is over 100 years old in North Dakota. Not a single other state has duplicated it. In fact, 2 years ago, Massachusetts had a panel of 21 people, and the vote went down 20-0 with one abstention that it was a bad idea. Here's my other concern about all the gubernatorial candidates. I'm not hearing any specificity because this idea, nor any other candidates have been talking about how to solve the school funding crisis, how to solve the property tax crisis, how to solve our tax code crisis, how to solve our pension crisis. The Bank of New Jersey is not going to solve those crises.
Right. What do we not know about you that you have, you've been on the campaign trail, people know a lot about you now, but what don't we know about you that would really serve us when we go into that primary on June 6th? What should we know about you when we put in our vote?
That my only ambition in my professional life right now is to point New Jersey in a new direction. And I care not if it means being reelected. That's very important to me.
Right.
I don't think people realize how deep this hole is. We are on the brink. And I'm willing to do whatever is necessary to point this state in a new direction. And it's going to take some sacrifice. Don't think that there isn't some pain spread out across the board in my 5-point plan. But as we all know in life, sometimes the short-term pain is what provides for the long-term gain. And we need that desperately. We need to turn this ship around. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to do that, even if it means not being reelected.
Right. Because you were up for assembly and you chose to run for governor instead.
I'm giving up my assembly seat to do this.
Wow.
I believe in my candidacy. I believe in my 5-point plan. And I'll have a little fun with folks.
Right.
In the history of this country, we've only had 14 CPAs that have ever served in the Congress, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. And we've only had 3 CPA governors. So what I always like to say to all the lawyers out there, give us a chance.
I love that. All right. Well, on that note, we have run out of time.
Wow, it goes fast.
It does. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
And we want to thank you to the viewers for tuning in today. I'm Lisa Allen, and this is As a Matter of Fact. I would again like to thank Assemblyman Ciattarelli for his time today. Check us out on our website at www.hometowntv.org. We're on YouTube, type in Hometown Television, and Instagram at Hometown TV. Thank you.